but people would still have video chats, but it was totally not preferred. I mean, and in video
Okay.
journalism.
Can you hold on one sec? I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. Sorry.
That's kind of what 2020 did to us. They were like, hold on, pause everything, be right back.
Sorry, there was a guy dropping off a package and he kept knocking on the door and I was like, oh, he's going to go away, but he didn't.
Oh,
So,
they wanted your autograph.
I guess he just kind of waved and walked away, but I was like, he kept knocking. So I don't, he just wanted to let me know the stuff was there or what. I don't know. Sorry.
No worries. I was telling our viewers in the meantime that it's like, that's exactly what 2020 did. They're like, we're right in the middle of the thing. Hold on, guys. I'll be right back.
Yep, hold on. I'll be right back.
This is The Cross Section with Nate Lull and David Edelstein.
Final one of 2020, man. It's been quite the year for sure, in sports and in life. Not even sure how to necessarily process the whole thing, but here we go.
Yeah, weird that it's wrapping up. And we were actually talking about this at work the other day. Like, it's kind of been like this joke that, oh, when 2021 is here, everything will be fixed. Like, we still have a long road ahead of us, even when the calendar changes. But I mean, if you would talk to me last holiday season, last Christmas time, and said like this was what was laid out in front of us, we all would have said, no, you're crazy. So
yeah. What a year
it's been.
I was listening to something the other day and someone had made a suggestion that we all go back and look at our photos that we took like a year ago, because we all know we take so many pictures on our phones and things nowadays. And if we go back and look at our photos from not only December and January, then February, and then of course March, and see like when we realized that the pandemic was a thing, and then realized that we should be doing certain things or not doing certain things, and how the world changed based on all of our pictures, that it will kind of tell the story for all of us about how this year kind of played out. And I have been seeing a lot of these like 1 year ago today photos that we all get the notifications for, or Instagram posts or something that I've made a year ago on December whatever, or January whatever. And it's funny to see like, oh, look at us all in the studio together, smiling and happy.
Right.
Or, look at this game that I was at on this specific day. And it's like, I'm thinking of to my past self in those pictures, like, just you wait a few days.
Yeah, mine are the same as yours, like work projects, photos from games. And then if I look back at my photos now, it's like projects I'm doing at the house, or because you're just home so much more. I've been thinking a lot lately about whenever we get back to some sort of normal and I can go to games again, like I'm completely out of that rhythm. And I think as a reporter, you kind of get into that rhythm of this is my schedule and these are the games and this is where I'm going today. And I've just been out of that schedule for so long. It might take a long time to get used to being on the road so much again.
Well, I will say, in a mode here of being grateful to have had the opportunity to cover the fall sports in Section 3 for those who played from end of September through November, is that it was surprising how easy it was for me to just flip that switch and I mean, you've been doing this professionally longer than I have, so I can only imagine that it was not normal in any sense of the word. We talked about the masks and social distancing that was required, and all the questions about the rules and stuff. But even with all of those changes, and with the divisions different and the whole atmosphere different, and knowing it was so long since I had last covered a game, it was easy to just flip that switch, and I was just back. And it was just like that all of a sudden was like, oh, I know exactly what I'm doing now. And it's a little bit of a different story, or it's a little bit of a different scenario, but you're doing the thing that and you're just back to it, and back to traveling, and back to moving around. It's easier to go that way than go back to, okay, now looking around what's going on locally, what do I do from my desk? What kind of stories can I tell? What breaking news is there? News about sports rather than the sports news, as I call it. And yeah, I think that for you, it would be super quick transition to just boom, you're back into it. It's like second nature. If I was able to get back into it that easily and just be like, oh, right, this is how I use the camera, and let's just zoom in and zoom out. And for you calling play by play or doing interviews and doing your players of the game and everything, it'd probably be so natural. And I'm hoping that we all get that chance toward March. It doesn't really look like winter sports are going to come to fruition, at least for more than 3 weeks max, in some form. So by March, I would hope that, I think that you and I would be able to just, it's easier than you think to just get right back into it. It's the going the other way for a second time that was more difficult for me.
Yeah, that has to be weird. I feel like for us down in Section 4, it's been bad news, but consistent of not playing, so we've gotten used to that. Whereas some of the other sections, including Section 3 for some of your schools, like, it's been kind of all over the place, and you've had games to go to. And yeah, that almost might have been harder in a way, I would think. Like, it had to be so scattered, It seems like it had to be so, like, this school is playing, this school's not playing. Like, was that hard?
You have 2 points. I agree with you that, yeah, it was definitely, you're right. It definitely was part of the weirdness that I was just mentioning, to, have a game change or have a game be canceled, or I show up to the game and it's a different opponent. We see this happening in Major League Baseball and in the NFL and all this stuff. But on the high school level, as we know, even some college levels, the information's a lot harder to get. And that's why, you and I are hired to get that information. But even with getting that information and calling athletic directors and everything, you show up somewhere and like, nah, you can't be here. Or you show up and it's a different team, or they've moved to the other field, or the school has now shut down, or the time was changed because they wanted it to be at this field with these lights because we were playing later into the year with the sun setting earlier and they didn't have lights at a certain field, but they still wanted to do like a special final game or something. And all of those little changes along the way were definitely a new challenge. And similarly to, like, sometimes getting scores are a challenge. They now have a new score website for Section 3, but how quickly are they uploaded? You still have to use the traditional methods of just asking people what's happening, even no matter what it says online or what it doesn't say online. But, as far as like the running around and everything, that was just kind of, that's still the normalcy, right? Just still moving around and going quickly to places. So yeah, I guess hard in a way, but that's part of the job. And you're saying it might be harder to have had games for a little bit and deal with all of that and then go back to not having it. Yeah, that transition's a little bit hard, but then you still have the what I do is you still have the layover of some stories from the season and recapping it. And then you still have looking ahead. But when you have nothing like you guys did, if I was only covering Section 4, for example, or any other section, like, 4 we'll use as the example because that's the one we both cover and you cover primarily, and Cooperstown wasn't even playing this year for you. So I think that had to be harder for you because, I mean, you're just looking for what's happening and there's not even like news about things changing, or, I mean, at least I had like 4 weeks or 5 weeks where there was like a lot happening plus anything else that was happening. Then I went back to like the results of how the season went, recapping that, like I just said, to have just stayed at the monotone, we're still waiting. I mean, that's an extra 5 weeks of trying to not pull from thin air, but figure out what is really happening when nothing is happening for you. So, I mean, what did you do in that time? I feel like that had to be hard.
I think you're right. We were in a holding pattern for so long, and it just felt like there was going to be some sort of answer at the end of the tunnel, but the answer never really came. So it was just waiting and waiting and waiting. And I think as that time went on, it got harder and people lost more hope. And that's what I'm seeing right now. In anybody that I've talked to or run into or had a phone call with, like, I would say our morale is really down right now down here because I think people just in section 4 especially, like they totally get it. It's a safety thing. They understand that. But the vibe that I get is a lot of people were like, well, section 3 made it work and other sections made it work. We're not asking for anything crazy. Let us play our closest neighbors and we'll wear masks. Like I think people at this point are just looking for a way to get creative, and they're hoping that something can be done. I just feel like down here, so many people, it was hope, 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 and then nothing happened. And then we just got into this long period, I'd say for the last 2 months, where again, it was like we were already kind of guessing that there was going to be no winter sports, and everyone was, and before in the fall and in the spring, it was like, well, maybe something will happen. And then I just feel like people have already thrown in the towel on winter sports. They're like, it's not going to happen. So it's tough. I think it's really tough down here right now because people just don't have the hope anymore, and they've kind of just gotten into this kind of funk almost. It is the only way I can describe it, and it's been frustrating. I've gotten to actually go out to a couple schools recently and go to a couple signing days, and it's just even talking to the coaches and the kids. They're like, I would do anything right now just for one game, but I don't think it's going to happen. So I don't know. It's kind of despair right now, and I hate to say it that way. Like I've tried to be very positive through all this, and I'm still feeling positive. But that's just, I feel like how the people I'm covering are feeling. Like, wow, everything has been ripped away, and we're not going to get it back. So it's been tough. And for me, like luckily I've had my podcast, but yeah, it's been really hard. There's been days I've been sitting at my desk like I know I need to post something or come up with something, and there's really not much out there. So that's been hard.
Yeah, I mean, I've been surprised after the fall season ended, so like mid-November to now, about how much there has been for me to look at. Whether it's recapping the season, how did you find fall season went? Hey, section 3 and section 4, what do you think about winter? Hey, New York State, what do you think about winter? Hey, whatever, who do you guys think about winter? Hey, what do you think about spring because of how well the fall went? Okay, what about the weather that's coming up? Okay, what about Syracuse basketball? Okay, now Syracuse basketball is not playing because of the COVID-19 cases that Buffalo had. Okay, Colgate ice hockey is playing. That's great. Okay, Colgate ice hockey has stopped playing. Okay, Colgate ice hockey now has their conference schedule released. Okay, Colgate ice hockey added a few more schedules before the end of the year now. Okay, the Hall of Fame has new artifacts from the World Series that just ended. Okay, all of these different things that I've covered along the way and that do keep popping up. Or the Boilermaker Road Race has now postponed again to October. So Nate, you got extra time to train for the Boilermaker this year.
Yeah.
A lot of extra time, but for the reasons they wanted it to not be postponed again. And now we've got the vaccine. So how does the vaccine affect sports? How does it affect schools? Do you want to be, will winter sports even happen? Or the state, what can happen right now? So all those different things, I've just been surprised about how many things I've found are related to what's going on right now, plus all the breaking news, like the Boilermaker being postponed or games being postponed or the NBA starting. I don't cover the NBA in person. We don't have a team near here, but all of a sudden I have, and the Comets aren't playing. And I mean, I spoke with the AHL commissioner, and I spoke with one of the assistant coach of the Comets, now is the assistant coach of the Vancouver Canucks. It's like on a daily basis, there's been like something to cover. And you and I both know that, and people probably have heard that in journalism and reporting, every day you show up, you have no idea what you're doing. Mm-hmm. In sports is the difference because we're used to having a sense with a schedule, right? And we know when the postseason is but recently we've been doing the news of sports is how I've been phrasing it. And it's just amazing though, how much every day something's been happening. But I will say, you and I, from our conversations here and in general, I could tell that both you and I have been trying to stay positive and look for the optimism and not purposefully be optimistic for our audience. We're supposed to bring our communities the accurate information about what's going on, whether it's neutral, it's not good or bad, it's just facts, what is happening. And some people may interpret it as what they want or don't want, but it's what is happening and how do we get to a place where we have sports. I think we can agree, and it's not a biased thing to say, we all want to get back to sports. We all want to get back to a sense of normalcy and health. That is not a biased thing to say. That's the goal. And our job is to figure out, okay, what do the experts say can or cannot happen along the route in doing that? We know that's the goal. And at least here in Section 3, we did have the sport. So we haven't gotten to that despair, and those words that you're reporting are the words that the feelings you're noticing and observing as a reporter in your area. I've noticed a big sense of gratitude this year for having things. And I mean, I think even without sports, there was that sense of gratitude, even if we didn't have the season, and even before we knew we were having a fall season. Gratitude for the past of what was had. Like, okay, we were really grateful we had that in retrospect, because now we know what it's like to lose something. And now they were like extra grateful to be like, wow, look at us doing something, and it's been provided. And that's that sense of gratitude. And now I just get from the Section 3 area community who did have the extra gratitude now, and some seniors did have stuff. They're dedicating scoreboards in Remsen to their seniors and everything, is just a sense of waiting, and there is that sense of hope, at least I'm interpreting from what I hear, of, okay, fall did work outside. So let's hopefully, we had one big snowstorm so far, maybe it will be warm towards March. And when soccer and football and Section 4 hopefully does also take some hope from what Section 3 did and had success outside. The executive directors have told me, they say that having the outdoor sports in fall was a success, and that gives them hope and being optimistic that spring sports, the fall too in March, and then spring starting in April will happen successfully, especially with baseball. Like we started saying back in March, which was spring sports season, that baseball could be played social distance wise, plus the vaccine now with that kind of hope, as that eventually helps us out. It's just, hopefully that's the sense of hope. Winter, still a big question mark. Maybe they'll have like 3 weeks to do an exercise together. Not sure. Doesn't seem like much will happen for the high risk sports like basketball and, other contact sports. But it does seem that the second half of this academic year, AKA the beginning of 2021, can be hopeful and positive and grateful. Are the words I'd use to describe it.
Yeah, I think I got to the point down here that, with the podcast, I like the way you phrased it, that we were athletes and coaches and parents were looking back on things and saying how thankful they were. I think that's kind of the route we've taken with the podcast, because I don't know about you. I know you're kind of more locked in with your reporting on this, but like, I kind of look at mine, it's not very journalistic thing to say, but like I got really tired of reporting on the same answers from officials, and it really started to wear on me. And I was like, I can't do it anymore. Like I'm totally fine with sharing something from the state or a local official, but I was like, I'm not doing anything. We're getting the same answers, and the answers aren't getting us anywhere. And I totally understand that those people don't have the answers either. So they were doing the best they could, but I was like, I need to do something different. And so I kind of just kept going with the podcast, and like, hey, let's take this opportunity, since for us in Section 4, like nothing else is going on. Let's look back and dive into things that we didn't have time to look at before, like a coach's background, or hey, let's get into the nitty gritty of every play of that last drive of that great football game, or whatever. And to me, that response has been really good. Like that's where it's been like, oh, like, okay, I escaped for an hour from my COVID world and thought about something normal, And so for me, that has been really rewarding and nice. And again, it's my job. When something comes up, we have to report it. But I just got to a point where I was like, I can't do this. Like, this is crazy. I can't like get jazzed about every press release that comes out that, says there was another meeting about a report on the meeting of a meeting. And I was like, this is where I just like, I'm a sports guy. I got to focus on sports, and I felt like that was the route I needed to take, and I think it's worked for us down here at least.
Well, you know, they say that a few things that you bring up, which are great. I mean, they say you can't be a sports reporter unless you understand how to cover news. And obviously it's still the same fundamentals of journalism and ethics and reporting and getting facts and making connections. And then you also can't cover sports without knowing economics. You can't cover sports without understanding law. And you can't cover sports without understanding, medicine, not necessarily medicine. I was looking for the right word, which is, like just how health systems work. And that's a big one this year. But you've got to think that there's also got to be a balance, right? We cover sports, and I keep using that phrase. I've used it. I kind of coined my own terms here. The news about sports is what we've been doing. It's like, what's the news? Press release. This gets postponed. COVID case released here. New updates on this. Rules and regulations. Whereas we're used to covering, and what's even more exciting to cover, I think, is the sports news, right? When you have the games, the highlights, the big plays, the person breaks a record, the 1,000-point scorers, the signing to a new school. The signings are most of the news about sports during the year. The rest of it's the sports news. But now we've been in this position of covering the news. We're reporters. We're still just reporters. We have a different topic, which is, we have games and highlights, but now we're doing the news about sports. I just think that everything in life needs to be in a balance. And suddenly things have been thrown off balance in 2020. It's been since March to December now. And the balance has just totally been leaning toward, not having sports, and everything's delayed. And it's just another thing delayed, especially in Section 4, where you haven't even had the quick relief of, wow, look at it. We have some soccer games,
right.
Which I got a chance to cover, and field hockey. That balance has been thrown off. But I think what's interesting about what you're saying is what I've always, of the many interesting things, is everything's been interesting so far. Is another point of interest to me is that you were looking for kind of the deeper messages there. And I know that your podcasts, you've gotten a chance to do a lot of longer form pieces. I have as well, including this, the cross section off air, on air still, the 90-second stuff, but getting a chance to really have those conversations and find the good, not being blindly looking for the silver lining. Like, okay, let's just always be cheesy and look for the silver lining, but really look for, in people's actual stories and of what's going on now and what's happened, to bring them to this point, about like who they are and what they make of this in their careers. I've always enjoyed doing that. And I tried to do that with the student athletes. I've tried to do that, before I started working here. And then also just with anyone I speak with, like, what is the bigger message, or what's like your life lesson, or what can we pull out of this? Not trying to be cheesy, like manufacture it, but really, What are you thinking? How does it relate to your life? And I think you've done a really great job of that with your podcast, because you've gotten a chance to sit down with people that maybe you see on occasion at games or have talked with over text, but now you got to talk with them in a longer form style and just have a conversation and really ask them, hey, what do you make of this? And what should we be understanding? And what is the different life lessons there? And I'm curious from you, like, what are like maybe the top three or three of the first lessons that stick out to your mind that have come out of this, besides just the sports, besides just the who are you stories, but like lessons that those conversations have led you to learn and your audience to learn that maybe you otherwise wouldn't have learned because you wouldn't have done the podcast.
Yeah, that's a really good question, really tough question too. I would say that going into it, I thought, I know a lot of these people really well because I've been covering them for a long time. So, this will be not easy, but I felt comfortable doing it. I then realized that while that was true, I knew them in that 10-minute increments after a game. The game's over, you go up, you do your interview with a coach or a player, and maybe you hang around a little bit longer, but most of the time we have things to do. We have to get out of there and get back to the station or on to the next game or whatever. I've been finding that diving in and really getting to hear people's stories have been it's been really rewarding in a way. And I've learned a lot of things about people that I don't think I would have ever learned. I would say the first thing I've taken away from the podcast is to health is wealth. That you hear that, but like we've had a lot of people on that have had different illnesses, different injuries, and getting to hear more than just the standard quote of, oh, I'll work hard, I'll get back, and like getting to hear what it was really like for them to grind through an injury or some sort of strange disease that came along, or fighting with cancer. I think about Matt Hazard. We had over an hour-long talk with him. We've had him here on the cross section. So I'd say, like, it really made me think about health, number one. Number two was I had a lot of respect for athletic directors and administrators. I think now I have even more respect for them because of everything they've had to do during this pandemic, in terms of paperwork, getting things into the state, trying to take care of their kids, trying to find that balance of, can we play a game? Can we have a practice? Can we have an open gym? How do we do this? How do we do that? And really not getting any thanks for it. It's a thankless job because people just expect you to do those things. So I would say that was number two, was just learning about everything that they did along the way. I thought that was amazing. And then I'm trying to think of a third for all the different people that I've talked to, things that have really stuck out to me. I would say the thing that I always go back to is I just can't imagine that I would have ever known the emotions that these people have as much. Like we just finished episode 93 the other day. We were talking to a coach about retirement, and I brought up this story about I was walking off the field from his last game, and his grandson came across the field and gave him a hug, and like he just started crying right there on the podcast. And it was like, I don't know, for me, that's why I got into this career, is less stats and highlights and all that. Like for me in this area, that's what I like, is connecting and like finding those stories. Like that's going to stick out to me in 20 years more than, I don't know, seeing even a game-winning goal or something. Like it's just those little things. I'm like, I would have never known that if he didn't come on the podcast and talk about it. Like I wouldn't have known that like family meant that much to him in that moment. Like that was really cool. So, I know those kind of sound like generic answers, but it was like that. I feel like COVID has let me step out of worrying about the schedule, the game, the score, get it up on Twitter, like hurry, and more like, hey, remember, like this is why you decided to come back here. This is why you left a bigger market and came here, and people thought you were going to Siberia and that you were crazy, and that you're going to stay here because you like it, and it's because of those stories. So I think for me, those are some of the biggest things that, like, in a way, I have to be thankful that I got this opportunity, because I'd thought about the podcast for a while, and I just was like, I don't have time. I can't, when am I going to fit that in? And this gave me the time to do it. So it's been a rewarding, strange, but rewarding experience.
And I think if we do some quick, simple math, you just said episode 93.
Yeah.
Think about how many episodes, split that into episodes per week, episodes per month, per week, per day, episodes per minute. I want to know like how quickly per minute you're, obviously it doesn't work that way, but that's obviously you've spoken with a lot of people and had a lot of great conversations. And I'll admit I haven't listened to all of them, but I intend to. But from the bunch that I have listened to, I mean, it's you're great in general. I mean, obviously we're talking here, but when you interview someone, you really ask the questions that allow, and you set the environment to allow people to feel comfortable, even during a pandemic, even during maybe it's a phone conversation, or I don't know if you sat down in person with anyone, from a few feet away with two microphones or whatever, but to allow people to feel comfortable to share those lessons or to share those emotions in a time where this is like such an emotional state in 2020 in the world, with, everyone dealing with some kind of impact from this change, and some Obviously really, really extraordinary ones that I'd hope no one ever had to deal with, that people are dealing with situations this year. And, but to, to be the kind of person that allows people to tell those stories to, because our job is not to necessarily tell them, right? I call myself a storyteller because I'll tell you a story or I'll tell someone else, but really we're almost a facilitator. We ask the questions and get the thought process ready and set the environment for people to be comfortable, for the administrator, the coach, the grandson, the student athlete in high school, the college student athlete, the professional athlete, all different, people, to tell their story and then allow us to share that with everyone else at a time like this. And so, no, I don't think that sounds generic at all. I think that those sound really impactful and powerful. And those are just 3, there are 90 more, plus however many more you do, plus however many multiple messages people gave in a single conversation. So there's a lot to learn. I think those are things that we'll reflect on. And it is all about those relationships, right? Like we love the stats, like you just said, and we love knowing when someone breaks a record, but it's not about necessarily the, oh my gosh, look how great this number is. It's about, wow, look how great this moment is, and the people that supported you along the way and who you're saying is important to you and why this means something to you. Those are the things that I both miss right now, not being able to cover. But then there's an extraordinary opportunity to cover sports in a pandemic that no one, if anyone alive today, has ever gotten to cover before. This is brand new territory that sets it apart. And on that note of relationships, I will say one of the positives that's come out of 2020, because they say it's not what you look at, it's what you see, right? That's a recent quote I've learned, and I love inspirational quotes. So you can look at 2020 and you can see all the negative stuff and all the stuff that's happened, and I mean, it's a tragedy. And then there are also things along with that, not the silver lining, but just like in addition, that we've learned along the way. We're more educated now because of this. And one thing I think we've learned is, on the note of relationships, is that video chat works. And I'm grateful for technology, because in 1918, during the last pandemic, they did not have this. 20 years ago, in 2000, I mean, in 2010, I bought like the iPod 4, and it just had like video chat FaceTime on it, So like 10 years ago, I can't even imagine what this would have been like. We wouldn't be talking right now like this. I mean, we might be on a payphone.
Yeah, right.
Were they able to record calls? Of course they were, but very differently back 10 years ago. But for real, to be able to video chat, and I've had the opportunity, you mentioned driving and running and having the time for things. Between newscasts, I did not have the time to go to a Unitigo game. I'll forever remember being at Unitigo High School after driving down there for the girls basketball preview of their regional game for the states that was supposed to come up this March. And I got a chance to speak with them. And then video chat has allowed me to keep connecting with the seniors from, the Section 4 schools. Obviously, Cooperstown is an hour away, even in Section 3. Old Forge is an hour away north in Section 3. You've got Oneonta, you've got Edmiston, you've got Morris, you've got, all those schools that I've now been able to connect more with because we've learned about video chat, which has existed, but now we have used it. We've used it a lot more because we've needed to, and I think it will be, whereas before, I might have mentioned this early on, it might not have been acceptable even in TV journalism to just, first of all, you always want to be there, right? That's the priority. Right. But if you're dealing with an hour and a half drive in between one newscast to the other where you have an hour, you obviously can't do that both ways. So it gives you opportunity now where it's acceptable to, hey, Nate, can we video chat and talk about, have student athletes on or have whatever the story is, and save the drive time and be able to give the opportunity for people for me to cover those stories and form those relationships, including with you too. I mean, this is a great example. We still haven't met in person.
Yeah, right.
We intend to do so. But, in the past, video chat maybe wasn't acceptable to put on TV. It was like, Skype was like the thing they did. And it was like, you don't want to do that. It looks bad. People aren't looking at the camera right. It's not high quality. The priority is obviously still to be there and make connections. There's no substitute. But now we weren't going to Oneonta anyway, an hour and a half drive both ways, down and then back, an hour and a half each way. Now I can do that. And now I can connect with you and other people and form relationships because we're actually using video chat in an effective way that we maybe were just like calling grandma on before.
Right. Yeah, I think it's been big for me for the podcast because probably the first 10 to 15 episodes I did all on the phone and recorded it, and it's fine, but the sound quality it's okay. But especially for a long form, you want it to be a little bit better, and now we have figured out ways, much like you have, where we can do it in person if we're far enough away and we're wearing our masks. So that's been really helpful for our sound quality. But we've done a bunch on Zoom, and there's days I'm like, I can't even tell that when it's just the audio, and if you get the right connection, I guess, and the right acoustics, like it sounds just like you're there. So that's been huge. And I think about all the times previous to this, we would do a phone interview and I'd be worried about the static and the hum in the background. And it's like, now we have this, and, it's been really, really good for the podcast. It's been good for cross section. It's been good for you. I mean, now I feel like it's just commonplace to flip on a local TV news report, and their guest is joining on Zoom or some sort of web conferencing, and you see it all over the place. It's like just normal now. And again, I can't imagine what we would have done if this was 10, 20, 30 years ago as a sports reporter. I don't know if I would have a job right now, honestly, without this stuff, because it's like, what would I do at work? I mean, I would have had to have just become like a secondary news guy or a weather guy or something, because I really wouldn't have been able to stay in touch with people the way we have now.
And I actually, on that note, like I actually did cover news. I fully, when there were no sports, I did a 5-minute piece to kind of conclude. I mean, we did like a long special right away, like on March 16th, I believe that was because it was 12th was a Thursday, Friday was the 13th, 14th, 15th, 16th was a Monday. See, I don't remember that for any other month in my life when March 16th was what day of the week, but it was a Monday. I remember now. And because of how much it stands out. And, I did like a 5-minute piece on where we were in all the sports. And then I was covering news press conferences and news stories. And it's actually funny to look back at some of those and see me not wearing a mask inside like a supermarket, because they hadn't told us that was a good idea yet. Because what we had learned about the virus so far told us it was only on surfaces. And then we learned, I'm like, why was I in it? It's just so funny to look back at that, how that's evolved too over time in our understanding of what the situation is. But the video chat, I mean, I don't know, it's become normalized, and it's almost funny in a way. Funny in the sense of like, how did you not think that, like, we already knew like Skype was the main way of doing this, I noticed in the past. Now Zoom is a verb, just like Google. Let's Zoom. It's so funny in a way of not funny like actually comical, but funny like, how did we not normalize that as a thing to think, especially in sports, when I think of like covering Cooperstown in the Baseball Hall of Fame, or covering, video chatting with student athletes who are, in Old Forge. They had a great basketball team this past year, and I only covered them when they were nearby. Like if they played like New York Mills right next to Utica, I waited for them to come here, and that was like the one day I covered them, rather than like now video chatting. Or even more specifically, I don't know, and it sounds funny to say it now with how normalized video chat is, but I don't know if I would have ever spoken with the AHL commissioner for a story, or if I would have spoken with, the president of Baseball Hall of Fame, or, so easily. For Cooperstown, you would make the 1-hour drive. But I mean, AHL commissioner in Springfield is their headquarters, or wherever they're traveling across the country, or North America, 2 countries. When would I get that chance? Or video chat with, the Canucks players and coaches. who are obviously in Vancouver. Or any of the other, we had Carissa Niehoff on this cross section, about the executive director for the NFHS that oversees, its member institutions for high school sports and gives advice. I don't know if we would have had a conversation with someone like that in any other circumstance, or would have even thought to be like, oh, hey, can we just jump on a quick video chat? It's normal to just chat real quick. Great to meet you. Okay, thanks. We'll keep in touch. I'll email you, whatever. Like that, it just wasn't a concept for whatever reason, even though video chat existed, to like, oh yeah, we can like talk to people from a distance and it's normal to reach out to them and they're okay with jumping on a video chat. It's just like so different now. And I think that it's opened up new opportunities. So it's been a new way to build those relationships and tell stories that otherwise maybe we just would have, for whatever reason, which sounds silly now, just let not happen because we were like, oh, we can't go see them. So obviously we can't cover it. Not obvious.
Yeah, we'll have a lot of skills now from 2020 that I don't know, if I would have had them without this. So I guess take the opportunities that we had and make the most of them and learn and use them going forward. I think that'll be, like you said, that'll be huge. It used to just be for me, if someone is in my network and I can physically go interview them, great. If not, then I didn't really very often think about it. And now you can Zoom with anybody and get an answer. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's made us more connected, and I think that's a good thing. I mean, obviously, like I said, in person is always preferred, but now we know we can video chat with someone, or hey, can we jump on a quick call? And it's like people are used to those quick interactions, like, hey, yeah, let's do this, let's connect, it's possible, and then do everything else in person again and normal at games or whatever. But with 2021 coming just around the corner here, or depending on when people watch this over the next few days, already here now. Happy New Year.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess a good way to kind of put a bow on all of this, and I was saying earlier, I don't know if really 2020 deserves a bow, but we can make these last few days what we want them to be, and how we'll remember 2020. What are you like looking forward to now, or what do you see? Like you mentioned, the problems don't just go away because we crossed the prime meridian into the January 1st, to Thursday. But there is a sense that months into this now, we have made the medical improvements with the vaccine, and that we understand how to have sports. Whereas in March, like if we knew what we knew this fall, I bet you Section 3 could have had baseball season, but we didn't know it yet. So now we know that it could be possible. What do you see coming next, I guess, is the way I'll phrase the question, but what's ahead for in 2021 now to start?
I think in terms of Section 4, I think we are hopeful that with the vaccine and everything that we've learned from, especially for us down here, the summer sports that were able to happen, the travel baseball and all those things, I think we're very hopeful that we can get some sort of spring season, whether it's cramming some other sports that we missed into the spring and into the summer, or even I think at this point in Section 4, I think athletes and coaches would just be happy if we could have a baseball, softball, track season in the spring and kind of just move on. I think we are hopeful for that. I think we are also hopeful that the vibe that I get, and I don't want to sound negative, but I think we're hoping that Section 4 will maybe hope to be a little more progressive this time around, and that will, I don't want to say take a chance, because I like the decisions that like Oneonta and Norwich and those schools closing early and making those decisions, like they did that because they had the facts and the information that made them do that. But I also think from talking to a lot of coaches and ADs, they are hopeful that Section 4 will say, okay, we're at a good point, the numbers are okay. I'm just kind of forecasting here that hopefully with the vaccine, things are looking better. And now we can at least try to do something like the other sections did, play a condensed schedule, play your geographic neighbors, get 10 games in. And I think a lot of the leagues down here have been meeting and figuring out ways to do that. I've talked to a lot of ADs that are like, we know if it's Sydney, Bainbridge, Guilford, we know we can play this day and then this day. and then take some time off, make sure everybody's healthy and good before we go on and play the next school. They kind of have a plan for all that. So I think people are hopeful here that between the vaccine, the knowledge that we have now, that perhaps we can get back to some sort of activities, because I think the other component of this is the mental health part, that kids do need to get out there and get active, and we're hopeful that we can provide that for them. So that's what I'm excited about. I'm hoping that 2021 will bring a little sense of normalcy and getting back to playing some games, hopefully.
When I look ahead, I also have that kind of optimism. Again, we all know the goal is to get back to what we would consider normal. Will we ever get back to a normal? I've always asked in life, what is normal? Just maybe something that we were used to, but in a more educated fashion. I think we've learned a lot this year about how to be healthy. I hope people have learned to wash their hands after using the bathroom and things like that, but we know we lived in a world in 2020 where people didn't always do that. And it's funny to say, but like, seriously, washing your hands, or, coughing into our arm or sneezing or whatever, so that, if we get to a point where we're not wearing masks again, whenever that is in the future, that like, we still understand the point is, don't just sneeze, really get it, block anything from spreading, because, and I hope that there's a bigger sense, not that people didn't care about each other before, obviously people did, but that there's a really united sense on all fronts of how interrelated we really are, not only in communities, but just in the world. I think it's something that a lesson the world can learn from this. And maybe we will, maybe some people will, and hopefully we get there, but that we really are connected. One plane ride can bring the virus everywhere, and then it just spreads and spreads and spreads. And just realizing how interrelated we really are as human beings, trying to just do the best, and how affected we can all be at the same time if we, not that anyone intentionally was spreading this virus, but in life in general, the extrapolation here is we have to just recognize how connected we really are. And if we aren't careful by following regulations that are put in place that scientists make and health experts make on the facts of like wearing masks and stuff or whatever, that it does have these kind of effects. I mean, this is a huge effect. I remember listening to a podcast in March that said, they were asking health experts, what do you think is coming next? And what do you think this country is going to do? And the person said, I just don't think people are ready for the type of shutdown that's about to happen. And I mean, I don't know if you could ever be ready for what we've had.
Yeah, right.
But as far as sports are concerned, taking those lessons into because it's all connected. In the sports world, I don't know what's going to happen with winter sports. I mean, schools have been shutting down. Cases have been rising right now. And I just think that it's going to be up to the state and the medical experts to decide what can happen. And the schools were deciding on their own not to have in-person learning. And again, they don't need to be in person to have the practices, but they can only have open workouts for basketball and things like that. In Section 3, the season ends on February 28th. So we'll see what everyone's able to get in, if anything, kind of workouts, or, the state still has to approve anything more than a basketball open gym, which means like using the weight room. So we'll see how that plays out. But when I look ahead more toward March 1st, even if things stay exactly as they are now, I think that there's a chance for them to get better. But March 1st, providing that the weather is not, the snowiest month of the year, which it could be in this area of the country, football, I mean, still would also, it's a high risk sport that still needs to be confirmed, right? So I guess that's part of the question. But I do see that the outdoor sports, football, right? Because in soccer, they were touching the ball and everything, like just like they say in football. But football, they're actually wearing gloves and the helmets already in there, so that's a debate to have again soon. But soccer season for Section 4, field hockey, I bet you they can do it because we've seen it work safely if things are, if it's determined that we're in a good situation. And baseball is spread out. I think that from what I'm hearing, there's optimism from this section leaders and coaches and staff and everything, and on all levels, even college too, right? That March, April, May, getting those fall sports to play that didn't play, because we've seen that it can, and then the spring sports this time around that we'll see some sports again. I still stand by my prediction that it's not going to look like a normal year until the spring of 2022, like, which is, I know, scary to think about, another year of craziness and not normalcy. But I don't know what this fall will bring either. We'll see. But I think that the first time that we'll feel like, okay, we're good, might be on the rate things are going is spring 2022. But until then, I think that there's a chance to have these sports that everyone's been missing so much in this spring.
Yeah, it's, again, I think we've said it right from the beginning on the cross section that, like, we're not in the business of predicting. So we can just sit back and wait and see what happens. I think those are two pretty educated guests that we just threw out there, and hopefully, I'm just hopeful that something can be done on some level, just so kids will have. I think even these open gyms are great if they can be done safely, and I've seen a lot of schools, at least down here, really pull them off, and I've been impressed. If they can keep that up, I think that's a good thing started. I've just seen so many schools, not even a sports specific open gym, just getting in there, stretching, working out, doing a couple of those type of things. I think it's just been huge for student athletes and for coaches, just to be able to have that kind of routine again. Hey, today is my day where I get to stay after school and do X, Y, Z. I think that's been really good. So I'm hopeful at least that will continue coming up.
Yeah. And you mentioned the mental health aspect. Obviously, we know that just exercise in general is good for feeling good, like emotionally. And we know that being with, into the sense that we can. So just getting a chance to maybe do some kind of workouts of any kind. One, there's that gratitude again. Then you've got the endorphins flowing because of exercise in general. And then the excitement to just be back to all of it. So I'm hoping that's what we see. This has been a crazy year. I'm glad that we started the cross section, and I'm looking forward to continuing it as we continue doing more. And it's been very rewarding to get a chance to hear, talk with you about all of this and get to know you and get to know all of the Section 4 stuff that you're mainly focusing on, and have a chance to share about Section 3. And to meet all of our different guests that we've had, again, making those connections, I think is great. And I'm looking forward to more of that in 2021, especially as we get back into like, hey, let me share my screen and show you the highlights from this game because I went to, because we're playing and you would never believe this. And maybe we have a highlight segment, but getting back to those kind of things, it's just been very rewarding to continually talk with you about all this, and wish you a very happy new year.
Yeah, and same to you. And I think I've been super impressed with everything you've done, because I think in the local TV world, sometimes people in my area of Section 4 feel like a little left out because we're just in kind of such a weird geographical area for the way the markets are. But you've really taken the time to come down here and meet with people like face to face, kind of before all this happened. And since then, we've stayed in touch and done Zoom. And I think that's the biggest thing with the small school people is like when you stay in touch with them and show that you care, which you obviously do. That's been amazing. And I'm amazed that you're able to fit all that in, as well as other things that we've talked about. Like if you look on your social media page or the station's webpage, it's like, one minute you're talking to a high school person, the next minute you're doing an AHL story, you're keeping track of the Canucks, you're always doing something. You always have a good guest lined up. So I think people really appreciate it. And it's the most I've ever seen people in this area watch Utica news. This has always been such like a big Binghamton news area. And I got to say, like, I feel like you're really pulling people your way. So I think that's really cool. And I just wanted to say that. So
well, I appreciate that. Thank you. Thank you for saying that. It means a lot because, at the end of the day, like you and I talked about, we do this because we love it. Mm-hmm. And, maybe the games and the highlights and the cheering of fans, which energizes both of us, is not existent at the moment. Or it was only for a moment, like a quick few weeks for me in fall, which It was obviously very limited, even the attendance. But we do this because we want to provide the community, one, with the information that they need to be able to do things. And you had even said this nicely before, which was giving them a distraction. And not that we're trying to distract them from the rest of the world, but the big irony here right now is that, and I said this literally, I have a clip of me saying this in March right away, like, hey, sports is usually the distraction from the craziness of the world, but unfortunately, the one thing that's happening now is you cannot gather in groups, and that affects mainly the sports, which is it's been a wild ride. But getting people the life lessons that you're doing, and the bigger picture, and seeing where things are going, and getting them to understand like where things are, and finding those information that they care about. I always appreciate their interaction with me on social media, asking me questions. And sometimes I'm like, that's a great question. Let me ask the person. And then I get back to them. And I just love being that intermediate, and just telling people's stories, and just being able to be the person between to talk to whoever it is on whatever level, and just share what's happening. So I appreciate you saying that, and same to you. So any good New Year's plans, or see you in 2021?
Keeping it small, I guess. And I'm excited for 2021. I'll probably just be, I will say that I've enjoyed, this is probably more NFL than I've watched in a long time, for whatever reason. I guess
the NFL's been on more days than ever. Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday.
I'm like, oh, NFL on a Tuesday, sure. It's like, it's probably the most football I've watched in a long time. So that's been fun. That's probably be watching a lot of football the next couple of weeks, and just trying to relax and work from home as much as I can. So that's my plan.
Awesome. Yep. Same here. I'm most likely working, right? As always, work on sports is still holidays and weekends, right? Got to be there. Can't take a day off. So
exactly.
Wednesday into Thursday this week. So, but happy 2021 almost. I'm trying to encourage myself to make these last few days of 2020 what I want them to be. So I'll be like, that's right. I ended it on my terms.
There you go.
Everything this year has been on 2020's terms. So
I like that.
I'm looking forward to it.